Welcome back to the Real Recovery Show. Yes, I am wearing the same outfit, and so is Tay-Tay. Because we haven't left the radio station.
We haven't left. We're continuing the conversation.
Yeah, the conversation last week on selfishness versus selflessness was so powerful, and there's so much more to say that we didn't want to try to squish it all into 1 hour. So here we are for a second hour to say not just what we've learned, but more of our personal experience about this topic, because it has been such a big deal, not just in our own individual lives, right, but in our friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I would say this is probably the biggest topic in our connection.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. It's brought up a lot of stuff for us to heal with each other, and then also individually to look at ourselves. We've been a very good mirror for each other. So I'm seeing what comes out of this hour. It's going to be interesting. But I'm willing to talk about whatever and to be as completely honest and transparent as possible, so that not only can we still learn more in this topic and continue to heal, but also to be helpful to other people.
Which is kind of the point of the topic.
Right. The topic is, it's so many layers to it. So, we were talking about selfishness versus selflessness, and if you haven't seen the other episode, I really highly suggest you go see it, because we really defined selfishness and selflessness in it. And so it really comes down to, for me, whether or not I'm operating from an I standpoint or a we standpoint, and whether or not I'm operating from a little self perspective or a self with a capital S. Self with a capital S for me means that it's coming from a deeper intuitive place, a place where maybe I don't have like a story attached to it. But I can always tell when I am doing something from a story of myself instead, because there's a projection of the who I think I am and how I want the world to be. And in that movie that I'm projecting, I'm evaluating whether or not I'm getting something or not losing something, and what people think of me and what I think of them. There's a lot of judgment inherent in that, and that to me is the epitome of selfishness. And selflessness it's not the abdication of my own experience in the world. It's not that I don't matter and that what I want and need doesn't matter. It's actually the opposite. Selflessness actually incorporates all the wants and needs in it, but just the motives behind the wants and needs are different. Like, for example, if I want a new car, if I want it from a very selfish place, this new car, it'll all be because I want to have status, or I want to seem like I'm accomplished, or I want to get away with something, or whatever, right? But when I'm coming from a place of selflessness, I might feel inspired to get a particular car, and I might feel a yes around it, and I honor my connection with the universe, and I just trust that this is the next right step. I appreciate and I'm grateful for the experience of the new car, but it's not something that's going to define me, and it's not about getting something from other people, like approval, or trying to do the whole smoke and mirrors, look at me now, so that I can get something else, And
even in that, it's also getting the car that you are being called to get,
right,
and not getting some, because it's not just status. It's also I don't want people to know I have a new car.
Right.
I don't want people to think this thing about me.
Right. It could be that too.
Yeah. So there's more than one layer to it.
And not only that, but I don't necessarily, from my story of myself, know really what my highest good looks like. And so I might want the kind of car that my ego likes,
right, but
my intuition says it's not really right for me for whatever reason.
Right.
Right. Who knows what that reason is? Sometimes we're made aware of it. Sometimes not. But yeah, I have a spine injury. Some people know this, that for years I wasn't able to sit on any cushy chairs or be in a cushy bed or anything like that. But being in the passenger seat of a car was hell to the no, because of all the jerky motions that people do when they drive. But being in the driver's seat of a car was tricky too. And so the right vehicle for me, I couldn't possibly watch enough Car and Driver and do research and read every magazine and whatever to know what the right car would be for me, and stuff like that. So my story of myself said, I should have this, I should have that. But my intuition said, you should get the Jeep. And my head was like, I don't know about a Jeep, but my intuition said, I want you to look at Jeeps. And so I ended up looking at Jeeps, and I got guided to this one car. And my head was still wanting a story. Oh, I don't know. I should have this, blah, blah, blah. And, but my intuition was saying no. I have a Jeep Cherokee. My ego wanted a Grand Jeep Cherokee. It wanted a Grand Jeep Cherokee, or it wanted one of those cute off-road Jeeps that like go climbing all over things that, you know, thank God I didn't get. I thank God I didn't listen to my ego, because I don't know, my spine would have loved that. But my intuition said to go and get this Jeep, and my ego wanted a Grand Cherokee because of the status of it, because of the extra bells and whistles to it, you know. But I don't need all the extra bells and whistles, and the truth is they're much more cushier too. So it wouldn't have even been best for me anyway. Right. And then financially, we went through COVID, right? And I used all my savings to keep the meeting space open. Where would my savings have been if I was using it for things like the Grand Cherokee?
Right.
You know, so we don't necessarily know what the highest good is. And I love my car, but I love it even more because, and mainly because, I knew that I listened to guidance that day, and I did what really resonated for me, right? And so I've had it for, I think it's a 2016, you know? And so, and I love it, you know? Well, I mean, we drive it all the time. But that's what I mean. So selflessness doesn't mean that your needs don't matter, your wants don't matter, and your social your joining with other people doesn't matter. That's not what selflessness means. It means it's the abdication of the concept of self, the story of who we think we are, the overvaluing status and appearance and you know, money, you know, metal discs and paper strips, and deciding that this is where our value is, this is what our self-worth is. It's letting go of that, and by the experience of letting go of that running on self, little s self, we drop into a deeper place where we're listening and honoring our yes and our no. And the selfless experience is one of joining. It's one of honoring and trusting that everything is provided, and accepts graciously when something is given, right? Where selfish would be like, gimme, gimme, gimme,
right.
But selfless trusts everybody has what they need, right? It's not taking, it's not losing. It's all about joining and appreciating and trusting in the overall understanding of that there's more than enough for everybody, rather than from a lack mentality that selfish goes and like it's like Smeagol with the precious, and is like and is constantly saying, I don't have enough, I can't be enough, I'm not enough, right? And so it has to always be guarded, right? The ego's always guarded. The story of ourself is never enough. It can never be enough. The story always changes. It can never be enough, right? But selfless says, I am here right now in this moment. I am soul having a human experience. And if I feel a yes to do this, if I feel a no to do that, I honor this. And in that, I can give freely because I am not at the effect of you. When you and I have had our issues, right, in our years of knowing each other, you know, a lot of times it's been because we had some sort of story about you with your story about what you think you need, me with my story about what I think I need, and egos clash. That's what they do. Self clashes with self. Right. You know? And so that's what selfishness is. When there's two people focused on themselves, it's impossible for them to find a true meeting place. But when there are two people wanting to tap into their intuition and their true self with a capital S, that's where there's a true meaning, a true joining that can happen.
Yeah. Something I was thinking about when you were telling the story about the Jeep, when I first started doing missions, I thought missionaries had to live a certain way. I thought they had to be poor and like, you know, like just barely surviving and all of this stuff. And some of the trips I did, I mean, like we slept out in the dirt, or like when I did a longer trip in Uganda and Kenya, I mean, we slept in mud huts and we didn't have running water. And this is what I believed missionaries had to be, you know? And then I did this other kind of trip to Southeast Asia, and these missionaries lived like we do in the West, but they, you know, they were
interesting,
you know, somewhere else, and they were living comfortably as full-time missionaries. And I remember thinking, so my concept is just wrong. You know, like, it's not that they're not doing this. So
you didn't think that they were greedy?
I didn't think that, because they weren't living greedy.
Right.
You know, they weren't, like, lavish, but they weren't destitute. You know, like there doesn't have to be this extreme either way. And I'm a very black and white person, and I feel like that's one of the biggest things for me is, like, I think, issues, okay, well, if it's not this way, then it has to be this way.
Right.
I don't ever think about the gray. Like, and so that's one of the things that I feel like I've learned a lot through the years with you, is that there are grays, and I do have to recognize them, and sometimes I don't recognize them until you're like, you're being very black and white right now. And I'm like, oh. So if I'm not selfish and I'm not selfless, there is a happy medium. And that's kind of where we ended the episode last week, is in that the space.
Balance, yeah.
You have the balance, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the all or nothing, black or white thinking is something that I myself was so plagued with that I had to do so much work to watch myself, because we by believing that things have to be this way or this way, then we don't trust the universe, because there's so many ways that something can happen. You know, like, we think it has to happen this way. I have to get this job with this person to get this thing. I have to be with this person. This is the person I'm supposed to be with. I'm supposed to only get whatever from them. You know, this person is supposed to be my one-stop shop. And then we come from a very selfish perspective, because we're like, I need this from this person, or I'm not going to be okay. I need this to happen this way, or I'm not going to be okay. And by locking in, by making those decisions, there's not this surrender of trusting that maybe some of our needs are going to get met, but not all with the same person.
Right.
Or it's not going to be the experience that we've told ourselves that our peace of mind needs, right, with the job or whatever like that. And I mean, honestly, and not just that, but like, when we're coming from that perspective of being selfish, where we could be defensive, we could be having conversations with people, and we can only hear how it affects us, rather than really appreciating more what's going on with them as well. You know, and for me, I have had big triggers around, you know, having conversations with people, and them only wanting to talk about themselves. I've had big, huge triggers around talking to somebody about what's going on with me and having them want to talk about themselves. I have felt triggered because of my own unhealed PTSD, right? Like, nobody's evil, right? And so, but in my experience, that was like really super difficult for me. Now, I'm going to tell you this. I've been, like I said in the last episode, I've been on both sides of this pendulum. I have been the person who was like self-abandoning and, you know, don't look behind the curtain, and I'm just going to focus on you, and I'm going to be everything for you, and I don't have any needs. I shouldn't have any needs, like kind of like your concept of a missionary, right? And then I would swing past normal, and I would be the other extreme that was all like, nobody cares about me. I need to like take hostages, and I need it to only be about me. And it's both of those were extremes. You know, just like if I stuff my feelings, it's going to come out sideways. You know, if I starve myself, I'm going to be starving. You know, these things, if I don't allow for a common joining where it's for everyone's highest good, then I am going to come from a selfish or self-abandoning perspective. I am not going to be able to be a team player. I am not going to be able to join in the we that we learn gets us into deeper recovery, right? And so when I was a kid, I always tell my mother something was bothering me, and she would ignore me and tell me I was being a drama queen, and she would leave the room, and I just had such an issue with that. You know, I had such an issue with that. And I would have to say that maybe that particular thing, like I've forgiven my parents and I understand, I really understand like what was going on with them. So it's no longer something like a resentment I have towards them. But there is a part of me, like the little girl in me, there's a part of me that's still holding on to some of the narrative of that. That, and I know this is true because if I feel like I'm interacting with somebody and it's becoming too much about me or too much about them in some way that doesn't intuitively feel right, you know, that's what happens. It triggers that little thing. And so that's come up, you know, and then when it's come up, it's usually, you know, made me like retract in a relationship because of it, because I don't want to be in a situation where it's not it doesn't resonate as what I've learned in recovery of being centered and wanting the highest good and joining together. And I don't know if I'm making sense right now, but I know what that feels like to not be in my selfish, like in there to get only something for me and leave, or my self-abandoning, you know, oh, I need to be the martyr and like sacrifice for another person. I don't have any real, there's nothing really I need or want anyway because I've already done so much, you know, and this is why I'm here to be helpful. And like those two extremes, I don't want to live in those headspaces, and so I don't like interacting with people who are wanting me to self-abandon or who are being you know, selfish, you know, like with me. And so it's interesting. I mean, the topic is interesting because, you know, more gets revealed. My goals and the way that I look at my own healing, I can see when something comes up to heal, I've lost some peace and where I need to work on something. And usually it has something to do with either, I'm telling you, when I ever lose any peace, it's either I have a concept of myself as the martyr and I feel like I'm being manipulated, or I have a concept of myself needing to be alone and I'm being selfish. I have a story of myself. You know, I gotta somehow protect myself or something like that. And it's just old scripts. You know, I meditate every day. I talk to God every day, all day. And so when a script comes up in usually a romantic relationship of some sort or an interaction, if it comes up, but it can come up at any point, it is something like, am I not letting go of the results of this? Am I attached to this being a certain way? Am I not looking out for the highest good of everybody involved? Like, where am I on this line? Where am I in this spectrum? I need to be able to make sure that I get recentered, you know, and let go of all my selfish, self-seeking, or self-abandoning motives.
What's interesting is in the last episode we talked a little bit about like when you told me that it was okay to feel my feelings. I feel like this is also something because I think about like our first fight, you know, and how it's like, oh my gosh, she's never going to speak to me again. She hates me now. Like she's never going to want to talk to me or be around me, or I'm losing everything. Like, you
all
know, like,
or nothing.
Because it's all or nothing, right? But selfishly, I was grateful when you were like, well, let's talk about it. Let's work it out. And I'm like, what are these foreign languages like she keeps talking about? Like feel feelings, work things out, like still love each other. Like I don't understand how any of this stuff really works, you know, because I never really got that peace. Like I talk about a lot how I'm not good at relationships, or I didn't used to be good at relationships, or however you want to put it. But I feel like when God was handing out the relationship thing, or the gray thing, or the, you know, feeling thing, like he missed me that day. Like, you know, like
or you were sleeping.
I was sleeping during that part of the putting everything together.
As we all were.
but so you know, this thing where you are able to reconcile what you need to work on or what you need to heal, I selfishly want that because I'm like, oh, okay, so there is another level to this, like, you know, but is it really selfish to want that, like, idea of, like, healing and leveling up and all that stuff? Or is it selfless? Or is it finally that balance?
I learned something recently that speaks to this that helped me tremendously. Somebody said something to me, and I was like, oh. He said that it is totally okay if your ego agrees with something you're intuitively getting.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so if I feel guided to get that Jeep and my ego is like, I like the Jeep because of blah, 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 that's fine. I don't want to feed my ego story about it or do anything because of it. But at the same time, it's okay. You know, we're on the same page, I guess. But, when I want to talk about something that happened and I want to work it out, right? I want clarity. I want peace. I want to stay. I don't want to lose the person necessarily or the experience with the person. But I also run the risk of wanting too much, that I'll stay in a relationship long after God's out in the parking lot honking his horn going, right already.
Let's go,
Lisa. Your chapter with this person is going to be changing. Let's go. And so my whole thing is like, I've stayed. I was a runner. I left relationships, but I also was somebody who stayed long after it was clear to everyone that I should not be there but me. And so it's a delicate thing because how do you know? And how you know is by continuing to be self-honest and intuiting, going deep and seeing, you know, whether or not this resonates. And so I just take things one day at a time. And if I feel, I try to be more and more someone who lets go of the results so that I can, you know, move about and allow for whatever needs to be. It's not that I don't care about the relationship. It's just that I also care about the highest good. And I don't really know what that looks like. And so it could be that today I stay and tomorrow I go. But I want to make sure that I'm doing what really feels right and not reacting from a story about who I think I need and my rights and all that and running, or, you know, give them another chance. I believe in miracles and staying. It's more about being true to you, you know, being true to myself and saying, all right, you know what, this isn't feeling like a yes anymore and I want to let go. You know, and honoring that and not being in relationships for the potential of them. But that's a whole different topic. But when it comes to being selfish, you know, just because we feel good about something we do doesn't mean that we're being selfish.
Right.
Just because we gain something from it doesn't mean we're being selfish. We can get paid. We can get a lot of money even. It doesn't mean that we're being selfish. What makes us selfish is when we're only concerned with ourselves.
Right.
That's what makes us selfish.
And in something you were talking about with the self-honest piece, I feel like a lot of times when I'm not honest with myself, it's because of being selfish. It's because I don't want to admit what is really the truth. And in order to hold on to, like you were talking about before, you know, that thing that I'm going to lose, I have to lie to myself about what's really the truth. Because if I didn't, then I'd have to be, if I had to be honest, then I would see, you know, how to be selfless in this thing.
Yeah. Honestly, it's funny that our dis-ease, our ego, our self-concept, our addiction will lie to us and tell us, don't look, don't be honest.
Right.
Because you need to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
You need the drug, you need the food, you need the alcohol because you love yourself and you need to protect yourself. You know, you need to be away from this person who's suggesting that there could be something for you to look at because they're making you feel they're hitting some of your boo-boos in your self-esteem and you don't like it. And so you're going to take your toys and go home. But at the same time, selfish, a true good selfish, right? The virtue of selfishness would be I'm going to take a moment and pause, and I'm going to look at this.
Yeah.
And I'm going to look at this because I really want better relationships. I really want to have a better job.
Right.
I really want to feel like I'm empowered. I really want to be healthier. And so that's where the good selfishness is, when you know that when you put quality energy and attention into your own healing, your own recovery, your own improvement, that it has a ripple effect to everybody you're interacting with. That you know you got to put the mask on yourself first, Mom, before you put it on your kid in the plane.
Right.
Like you need to.
Yeah, it says it in the instructions.
In the instructions, right? So you know you need to do that.
Yeah.
You need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself so that you're not putting yourself in a position where you're in an extreme mental state that you need to take from another person, or you need to be mean to another person, or whatever. Like we need... There's this saying in recovery, HALT. Don't let yourself get too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. And if you're all of those things, separate yourself from other people for a second and deal with it.
Yeah.
Or at least be more mindful that you may not be able to be the nicest person in the moment, and you also may not be able to be the most selfless, right? Because you're operating from a fear perspective of losing something or not having what you need. And they say in recovery that we operate from 3 fears when we have fear, right? They all have like a myriad of form, and there could be a gazillion fears that you may have. But ultimately, the fear that's behind all those different fears are the 3 fears of losing something that we think we have, not getting something that we think we need, and of what other people think. And if you think about that, 3 fears being losing something we think we have, not getting something that we think we need, and what other people will think, not being liked, right? Being abandoned. Everything we do, everything we react to is all from the basis of that. If maybe you take my car out, right? And hypothetically, and you don't end up doing something that I feel like I need you to do with the car, right? And I get angry, right? It's because I'm afraid that something's going to happen to the car.
Right.
Right? I'm afraid. Then, let's say I don't get angry, or I do get angry, but I don't show it, right? But I'm coming out sideways. I'm afraid of what you think of me, or what other people think of me. So like, whatever it is, these are ideas of survival that are not based on listening and honoring our true self. They don't trust the world around us, and they certainly don't trust God. And so you could see where we're coming from self, that we can have these fears and that they could be running our show. And so whenever we're in self, whatever we are in the unhealthy selfish, we can ask ourselves, and we can usually tell we are because of how we feel. We're not going to be at peace, right? And there may be a look on the other person's face, and then somebody might be pissed at us. So there's just some clues that we're selfish. But we can ask ourselves, what am I afraid of? Am I running on fear?
Right.
Is there something that I'm afraid of?
Yeah.
Right? And I one time heard this thing. I believe I said this on a previous episode, but I'm going to say this again because it's so important. I think I said this on the feelings one. But that all resentment comes from one or more of these fears, right? But fear says, I won't get or will lose something or they'll judge me. But anger says, I'm not getting or I am losing currently or they are judging or somebody doesn't like me right now.
Right.
Right? And if you feel what that feels like, fear of that happening is an anxiety, right?
Right.
And I'm not getting feels like a vibration of like I'm now uncomfortable in my own skin. Something currently is happening. And if it has any like juju to it from the past, some unhealed PTSD, relationship issues from the past, something someone did in the past, something we think we didn't have what we needed sometime in the past, it'll dredge up all that in our snow globe. And we will experience that kind of uncomfortable discomfort, that irritability, that restlessness, that discontent in our own skin. And it's more likely that we'll end up doing something to change the way we feel, which is why they say that anger is a dubious luxury of normal people. Because when we have addiction that's right there to tell us, you have a feeling we don't like, do something about it now. Anger is one of those that really rattle our cage with all of its self-righteousness to it, that make us so uncomfortable, separate us from everybody else. We're less than or more. We're better than you, or you're taking something from us, and we got to somehow do something right now to fix this, because we're not going to have what we need. We're going to lose something we think we already have, or somebody will abandon us. Somebody will shun us. Somebody will gossip about us. Somebody won't like us. You know? And I don't care if you think that you don't think that you care what people think. I think everybody on some level, if they have any kind of self-concept, cares what other people think. From what they dress, from what they do. I mean, it just manifests differently. You don't need to necessarily be like, you know, insecure, biting your nails about it, but you could definitely be concerned with what other people think in a way that affects your decisions about what you're doing when you're activated in that. So fear says I won't get, or I'll lose, or they'll judge. And anger says I'm not getting, or I am losing, or they're judging. But resentment says I didn't get. I lost something, right? Or I wasn't liked, or I was abandoned. And that is, my friends, the stuff that we need to clear out. The resentment, you know, resentment. So resentment comes from the word sentir, which is to feel. And when you put re in front of it, it means to do it again and again. So re-sentir. So I'm going to feel over and over and over again. And even if I don't necessarily, if I'm not really aware that I'm feeling anger in what I would think, you know, my inner Hulk looks like when I get angry, you know, Hulk mad, you know, it doesn't mean that I'm not angry. I can have a subtle little, you know, when I see a person or think of a person. I can have maybe the narrative of what I share about a person come out a little bit with some things I'm not supposed to be saying that way. The tone of my voice, the shortness of it. The way a person feels that I'm distantiating from them and they feel like something's not right. The anger manifests in a lot of different ways. And just because I'm not batshit crazy doesn't mean I'm not experiencing anger. You know, and fear doesn't mean I'm having a panic attack. It just means that, or huge anxiety attacks. It just means that there is something that I'm doing. I'm reacting to my environment because of interpretation of I'm not getting what I need. I'm going to lose something, or I'm not going to be able to have my people. I'm not going to be, something's going to make me, you know, and I was riddled with this stuff. You know, I was riddled with all of it. I was so afraid. And one of the biggest reasons why we need to heal the resentments and watch for the anger and address the fear is because resentment is the thing that refuels the fear. If I believe that there's something that I didn't have, or if that happened to me, it took something that I didn't have what I needed, and with my childhood there was plenty of information to use as the ammunition for this, right? Then I'm going to be afraid. I'm going to be afraid of this world. I'm going to be afraid of somebody else abandoning me. My mom did it, my dad did it in this way, I had this stuff going on, whatever, so I have to be careful. I have to be guarded. There's no God. There's no trust. There's no, I'm not enough. I'm too much. There's all of that. And that is a lot to carry for one person to move about the cabin. Like, I really was constantly thinking of myself, and I was in fear. I was a steamroller. I was very, very focused. I was running and gunning and trying to manipulate the universe. And it was so stressful. It was so stressful. Coupled with my stories of who I think I need to be this hero. And I was a danger to myself.
I think something you were talking about with the anger, fear, resentment, anxiety, like, and this, you know, this idea of, are you future tripping? Are you past tripping? Like, or are you sitting in one day at a time? Because I know in recovery they talk about this concept of one day at a time a lot. And I was thinking about when I was pretty new in recovery. I really wanted a drink. And I didn't want to drink because I wanted a drink. I actually never wanted to be as sick as I had been when I got sober. but I felt like I was missing out, you know? Like, it was MySpace at the time, so I was looking at all these pictures of people on MySpace and like, you know, all the fun they were having without me, because they still partied without me. Like, I thought I was the reason they partied, but no, the world does not revolve around me ever. And so this idea of like, now I'm missing out. Now I don't have this connection with people, and I'm never going to have this connection with people again. And it's all my fault. And why can't I do it normally? Like, why can't I be healthy? Like, why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? And having to like be told to get into a place of a one day at a time. And I still do that today. Like, I'll be future tripping about, when am I going to finish my PhD? When am I going to do this? When am I going to do that? Like, when am I going to, you know, and there's...
Or the car, even.
Yeah.
Like, Tay just had her car stolen.
Yeah.
And it's been an interesting lesson in it. Like, the how do I trust that I have everything that I need? What do I do? What's my intuition? How do I ask for what I need?
Right.
If I need a ride from somebody.
It's really hard to ask for what I need, you know? And because I feel like I'm 40 years old. Gosh, I'm 40 years old. And I'm asking people for rides. Like, it's like humbling to a different degree than I expected at 40 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm not just like I'm a 40-year-old professional. Like, like, it's not like I don't make money.
Right.
Like, and it's funny because I've talked about a little bit on the show how, you know, I've been working out this year and I'm, you know, like changing my lifestyle and stuff like that. And I've really been talking about getting a bike and like just riding a bike, because I don't live super far from work. So it's not like it's unreasonable for me to ride a bike to work.
And then your car gets stolen.
Yeah, and so I've been talking about buying this bike, and somebody was saying, yeah, these e-bikes are really cool. They're $1,500, and I'm like, if I'm going to spend $1,500 on a bike, I would just buy a car.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't spend $1,500 on a bike. I'm talking about like a $300 bike that I can ride to and from work.
Yeah.
Like, you know, but like I'm living in that one day at a time of like, okay, well, I at the moment my needs are being met, so I haven't jumped the gun, you know.
Yeah.
And as long as my needs are being met, like, I can live in the one day at a time. You never know what
anything is for. Like, for me, I was feeling, on my side, like, oh my God, you know, because we live together, I should be lending you my car all the time. And so, like, but I need my car, and blah, 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 you know, and then it's like, and I would go back and forth, and then like I would feel guilty if I said no, and then I would feel bitter if I said yes, if I knew that I needed it, and so like I knew that I couldn't, and like, so my story about myself was coming up, and it was like, I had to talk to you about it and go, listen, this is not just hard for you. This is hard for me. This is bringing up some hero shit. You know, like, I need to stop this. And so I was like, all right, God, you know, I'm not going to make any decisions. I can't, because if I make decisions, I'm making them from self. I'm either the selfish or I am the self-abandoning. Right. You know, I'm either like the hero, you know, that I don't have needs, nothing to look at here, or I am the selfish, like, no, you can have my car, you know? Right. And so like, there is no way to be sane like that. So I had to step out of it. I had to step out of self. I had to recognize self. I had to recognize that I was being selfish either way. Right. You know? And I was avoiding conflict. You know, avoiding feeling or looking like a bad person for not giving you my car, right? Right. And
which I've never once felt like.
But one time you had to get a ride to the house and my car is sitting in the driveway, and I was just like, I felt bad. You know? And I was just like, hold on a second. Yeah. No, you were not guided. So I just was like, all right, you know, this is just another area, and everything always is the answer of surrendering and trusting the intuition. Because, and this is what, when I was finally like, I was like, you know what? I mean, this just happened, so it wasn't like this long dragged out thing, but
my car was stolen a month ago.
Yeah, like, but I feel like I missed. And I've been talking about codependency and enabling and healing, and then how important it is that we don't overhelp and etc. And then the rubber meets the road, and she loses her car, and now I feel like I need to be the hero and blah 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 blah, but I can't be, because I have to listen to God. So I go, okay, God, you're in charge. You're in charge. You give me a yes if I'm supposed to lend her the car. You give me a no if I'm not supposed to, right? And so I exhale. But then what was interesting, I think that's good enough. I think this is great. Okay, I just trust, right? I have enough peace in that. But wait, there's more. my intuition now can be heard, right? So my intuition says, you don't know why her car was stolen. You don't know what this is for. Maybe she is supposed to get a bike. Maybe she's supposed to ask for help. Maybe she's supposed to have certain conversations and connections with certain people that are going to give her a ride that she wouldn't have if she wasn't in this position. And who are you to play God?
Right.
You have no idea.
Right.
And I was like, whoa. I was like, what am I doing? Of course. I don't know what anything is for.
Or maybe my car was going to blow up because it was kind of falling apart.
That's the other part. Like, she had something wrong with her car and she went to go get it fixed. And intuitively, we both felt not to fix all the things, that the car all of a sudden had all these issues, and we just felt to fix these couple of things, and then the car gets stolen, and we listened to guidance, and we're like, oh, thank God.
Right. This could have been more expensive than it was.
Oh my God, that was like crazy. But that's the point, you know? If we listen to the stories in our head, we could be crazy, making crazy decisions, and then resenting and regretting these decisions, right? And what brought us to more of a harmonious situation around this whole thing is the two of us looking at what it was bringing up for us and honoring our issues, you know, and saying, okay, my issue, that old codependent needing to be the good person, you know, BS came up, and a fear of something happening in the car came up. I had to process all my stuff, you know, even like the bringing of my car to your work where your car got stolen at 4 or 5 in the morning. You know, it was like, my mind was like, well, what if my car gets stolen? You know, so the fear of losing something, you know, the fear of not being liked, you know, like whatever it is. And so to face it is freedom, because then it's like, you know what? Come on already. I don't know what your highest good looks like. And maybe you're supposed to get a bike and we're supposed to go riding and we'll continue this 2023 challenge that you sucked me into. You know, and then like that I've done destroying. 600 miles so far. But yeah, I don't know. But it's, you know, when we see it from a perspective, and when we see situations from a perspective of it being a classroom and helpful, that things are happening for us and not to us, I recognize that class was in session, the car was stolen, and whatever the experience that person who stole the car was supposed to have, you and I have grown in it. Yeah. You know, and have learned stuff about ourselves in it, you know, and that's ultimately the point, to move from selfish, self-seeking, self-centered living into, you know, caring about the other person, wanting them to have what they need, right? Without self-abandonment. And without overly caring about who I think I am and what I think I need, and not being there, being self-seeking, you know, and that to me, I mean, I feel personally. Do you feel? I feel like we've grown a lot.
Something that's funny about what you've been saying is that a lot of this car experience does relate to a lot of things that we've talked about. Yeah. Because I have had conversations with people that I wouldn't have had conversations with. I have had people give me rides that, like, I would have never thought were friendly enough to me to do that. You know, like I've had these like connections with people, and it's that I don't have...
you were so surprised. Like some people that were giving you rides, you're like, I never would have thought this person would be so good about doing that.
Yeah, and it's a I don't need one person to be my one-stop shop. Yeah. You know, and I'm not going to lose something by reaching out to somebody else, and they're not going to lose something, and I'm giving other people the opportunity, like we were talking about earlier, you know, like whose wallet am I using using mine, or am I using God's? Because like this person might need to be able to be a blessing that day, you know, and I feel like that's a lot of the tools that you learn in recovery, and sometimes we forget them when we've been around for a minute. And
I think sometimes people think that recovery is just doing some writing, some speaking, and some amends, you know, and it's not applying the tools on a daily basis to everything that happens. Life is in session every day. You know, people's cars get stolen. It happens, you know. Yeah. People get sick. Things happen, you know. Relationships end. That happens, you know, and new jobs, new places to live, people move. Right. And so,
especially in this town,
so it is important to recognize that we live life on life's terms, and we learn to live life on life's terms, but the selfishness could get triggered in anything. When something goes and seems to threaten what we think is our security, like if we're so attached to something that we're driving or we live in, or our house or our job or our relationship or the way somebody sees us or anything, and we think that our happiness comes from that, we are going to come from a selfish perspective. We're already coming from a selfish, self-seeking perspective by attaching our serenity to it in the first place, but when something threatens it, it's on. Like, the selfishness will come out, the bitterness, the fear, the being overly focused on ourselves, the not caring about the other person. And so, I heard somebody share, I used to record all these events when I lived in Texas. I was the only taper for all the events that were there for recovery, retreats, etc., workshops, yada, yada. And this one woman, she shared something. I don't remember anything else she shared. It was a great share, I'm sure. But she shared this one thing, and I was like, whoa. She said that she used to use people and love things. And then she ran out of people. And then she had to do recovery. And then she transitioned to loving people and using things. And that's the epitome of selfishness to selflessness. That we're in selflessness, we're joining with people. We have more, ironically.
Yeah.
By giving in a joining way, we gain.
And we don't run out of people anymore.
Our world gets bigger.
Yeah.
Where we're selfish, our world gets smaller. We run out of people because people get turned off. I get turned off when somebody goes, oh, Lisa, you're really good at this. Can you help me with blah, blah, blah? And it's like, oh, you're buttering me up because you want to ask me for something. It's like, but I have to detach from that and then go, okay, what do I feel guided to do?
Yeah.
And not do something in a self-seeking way either. So, yeah, we move from using people and loving things to loving people and using things.
I love that.
And it just shifts. It shifts our whole perception of what it is that we're really doing. Also, I've had to do a lot of work on watching my Terminator mind attitude. I've used this as a visual a lot, where like in Terminator, he has that computer inside his mask where it goes and says, it looks at a person and it goes, Tay-Tay, Johan, and it literally just like, okay, this person's good for this person's good for this, and like literally just see them as like something to get from, something to use, right?
Because it's ones and zeros.
I used to do that.
Right.
I used to do that. I would always like size a person up. What do I need?
Yeah.
How can this person, and there's nothing wrong with seeing how somebody may have certain strengths and they may not be my strengths, and knowing that joining together we can accomplish something together that I wouldn't be able to do alone. But coming from selfish perspective has no concern whatsoever for their highest good. It's not about joining at all. And I was doing that, so I would just size people up. And I was also, when I felt like, and I know this is horrible, and this is how I was, but when I was done with them, I was done. That's how I was. And that is like, to think that I used to be that way. Like if somebody was just, not useful in that way, I just carried on what was done to me, and I really, truly believed that thing. I was so selfish, so self-absorbed. No wonder my life is so miserable. I kept people at an arm's distance, couldn't trust anybody. How could I trust anybody else when this is what my behavior was?
Right.
So selfish, it's the unhealthy selfish is so toxic that it's something I want to be as far away from as possible. I want to trust God. I want to let go of the story of who I think I am, who I think I need to be, and what the world needs to be for me to be okay. And I want to be detached, but with love. I want to join, and I want to trust, and I want to be truly helpful. And from that perspective, that's my experience of selflessness.
Yeah.
That I'm not always there, but it's my goal.
Right.
It's my compass. If I'm not at peace, it's because I am not being truly plugged in and letting go of the results and trusting the deeper plan of it all, and that there is a purpose.
Right.
There is no purpose for a greater good when I am selfish in an unhealthy way. The only thing I think is me.
Mm-hmm.
Me, furthermore me. It's the me channel. So, yeah. It's not really what we do. It's never what we do. It's why we do it. And that's what makes it selfish or selfless.
Mm-hmm.
You know? We can gain from it. But if it's for the highest good for all, and it's trusting in the universe, and it's trusting and coming from love and wanting everybody's highest good, then it's selfless, even if we think that, wow, I can't believe I get to do this. You know?
Mm-hmm.
I've had moments where, no, it's kind of crazy, but I've had moments where I pinch myself because I'm like, really? I get to do this?
Yeah.
How come I get to do this?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
There was some event that we were leaving, and we were both like, "This is what we're doing with our lives right now."
But we get to do this.
Yeah.
How is that even? You know, the selfish part of me would never have been able to get there.
Right.
She would be still scrounging around with what she thought she needed for her instant gratification.
Right, and for her status, and for her, persona.
But in being selfless and in trusting, it's amazing what ends up happening with that. So yeah, selfless isn't not self-care. It's not self-love. It's actually the highest form of love. It includes others in the good, from honoring the true deep yes and the no that we feel intuitively, and it's willing to be truly helpful, and it knows that its own good is included in it. Mm-hmm. And so I hope you enjoyed our episodes on selfishness versus selflessness, and you can go to themeetingspace.com and watch our other episodes, and definitely send us a note, give us your comments, and like us on YouTube, and look at us and all the other places that our show is. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on Amazon Fire TV, we're on the PHLV Radio app, we are on podcasts. Our podcast is on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, on iHeart Radio. Mm-hmm. And remember that the opinions expressed here are strictly those of the people who gave them. It's only our experience, strength, and hope. It does not represent any 12-step program. And it's never meant to replace any medical advice. So thank you again for joining us on The Real Recovery Show. We'd like to give a special thanks to our sponsor and gracious host, PHLV Radio here in Las Vegas. We are so grateful that we get this opportunity to work with PHLV Radio. So see you next week.